Welcome back to Show and Tell. I'm Billy. This is my little corner of the interwebs where I talk about largely vintage knitting, and I do the usual drill of works in progress, finished objects, acquisitions, not necessarily in that order, but I will start out right away with FOs. So first up, I wanted to show you this little cardigan. I couldn't show it to you completed last time because I didn't have the buttons yet. Once again, my friend Sabina comes through. She brought to our weekly meeting a huge bag just of red buttons with a little bit of orange thrown in, which reminds me at the end, I have to show you a beautiful button that I took from her without a plan, and maybe you could help me decide on something to use them on. Anyway, my friend Elizabeth commissioned me to knit this adorable French sweater with the Scotties on the front for her grandson. I so desperately wanted to knit the sweater because I thought it was just cute as hell. I've never seen a construction like this. See the the top of the back? That's a little bit of collar. Well, and here it is on the actual sweater. That's the top part. And then the front button band comes up to meet that back collar part. So on this side, I haven't attached the front button band to the back of the neck, but I'll be stitching these together. Just wanted you to see that because I thought it's unusual construction. If any of you have seen the current film Project Hail Mary, Ryan Gosling is wearing a similar sweater. His is a Mary Maxim, I'm pretty sure. This is not, but same level of cuteness. Maybe this is even cuter. Initially, she had purchased yarns that were like beige and brown, and I tried not to look disappointed, but I really didn't think that was going to be so much fun for me to knit. Of course, the Scotties thing would be really cute, but I showed her the picture that was in the book, and the next week when I saw her, she had traded in the yarn to get these colors because I think she saw maybe in my eyes a little disappointment, but she really thought that these colors would do it more justice, which I couldn't agree more. So the little Scotties, let me flip this inside out. They are done in Intarsia. So the inside of the sweater looks pretty neat. There's a little stranded color work there. But here's the inside of the Scotty. So it's not too unruly. And I'm sure in no time at all, this yarn is going to melt into itself. And those strands won't even be catchable with little fingertips. You might recall, if you've been here before, that the yarn that I used was Pascuali Sayama. The fiber content is alpaca and Highland wool, and it is just so dreamy. It's not rustic, it's soft. It does have a lot of little fibers. I don't know if you can see them. Like here's one standing out. I don't know if you can see it that well, but it's not really what I would call a halo, but it sort of is a halo. There's random fibers. Maybe it's more visible in the navy. I don't know if you can see these, but there's all kinds of little fibers that just stick up. I guess that's part of what makes it soft. I don't know. It's soft, but in a different way, not a cashmere way. It's just so fabulous that I'm sure that this winter I'm going to want to knit something for myself. It comes in a whole bunch of colors, and I know you've heard me say before, if you're a returning viewer, that HM Nabavian, my favorite local yarn shop, carries this yarn and other fine Pascuali yarns. And now he's bringing in some Rowan and Serdar and some other things. But if you're interested in purchasing any of the yarns that he carries, there's a discount code available in the show notes, and I'll also put it on the screen. So you go to his website and shop away. The code is only good for one time, so bulk up your order, put together all the yarn that you want to knit with this fall, and you can get a discount on your whole thing, no matter how large your order is. So that's my first finished object. I have also finished, at long last. I'm going to slip into it, but before I do, I just wanted to give you an up close look at the fantastic buttons I was able to find at Dusty's Vintage Buttons. Did you notice that they have this little checkerboard motif, and the motif of the texture is also checkerboard? Come on. And I thought the color, it's really hard to find something that would be this color unless you go into just a plain beige or plain white. But I wanted something that really smacked of vintage and would be very unique. So I was lucky to find those. I used 3. I have a spare 1 or 2 just in case. But because the buttons are big, the pattern calls for these not to be functional buttons. There's a snap behind them, which I'll unsnap it to show you. But I felt that, and actually I think the pattern said to put a little strip of fabric behind it. So my friend Ellen was cleaning out her late sister's apartment. And in addition to all these embroidery threads and all sorts of elastic and sewing threads, all kinds of things, I found this little bit of ribbon. And even though it was metallic, which wasn't what I was looking for, I thought the colors were just subtle enough and the width was perfect. I mean, I just eyeballed it. I didn't have the sweater with me or anything, but I brought it home and sewed it in by hand, and there it is. It really helps support. You can see it's not flopping like the rest of the sweater. Well, you can't really see that the rest of the sweater is flopping, but I can assure you this part has a bit of a stiffness to it that will support snapping and unsnapping. I sewed the snaps on behind the button at the same time that I was sewing on the button. So it's all through and through. It'll give me something to, I guess, grip onto more easily when I have that whole package there instead of just the thin little button. These snaps happen to be vintage snaps, and I don't know if contemporary snaps are made this way, but these have a hole in the center that lines up with a hole in the center of its mate. And you can put thread through and through, snap it to make sure that it's lined up where you want it to be. So it's kind of a clever system. Anyway, I started working on this quite a while ago, and finally, I had to redo the collar because the collar was just choking me. I made a larger collar. I haven't tried it on yet. You're going to be my guinea pig. So stick with me. I'll be right back with this on. Okay, here's a little B-roll for you. Here's the finished sweater. The beautiful buttons. This collar is much more like how I wanted it to be. And I'll put a picture here of the original pattern. The sleeves have an interesting little detail. There's a little tuck knitted into it right there. I'm really happy with it. The yarn is silk and linen. I'll put the name of the company. It's a discontinued yarn. I picked this up really at a great price at the Guild's annual sale last November. Last November? No, probably the November before. I think the November before. Anyway, real happy with that. Okay, now, oh my goodness, for years I've been talking about for the Rink or the Lynx. I am finally coming down the home stretch. It's not finished today, but I am working feverishly on it. And I feel like this time it should work. The first time I knit it, I had to rip the entire thing out because I did stranded knitting instead of intarsia. The vintage pattern didn't specify. And you might recall that the fabric was so stiff that I just couldn't put the sweater on. Somebody suggested to me after the fact, well, you could have steeked it and made it into a cardigan. No, I really wanted it to be a pullover. So let me show you what I have so far. Okay, it's still a little bit of a rush of rags, but I have basted together the front and the back. Now it's a stretchier fabric, hooray. The ribbing, I still have a provisional cast on here. So after I try the whole thing on, if I want to extend the ribbing down, I can do that. In fact, I could even knit in the round at this point because they're both the same length, the ribbings. I showed you the inside once before, but I have started weaving in some of the ends. So this is not my proudest moment, but just for those who are uninitiated, you get to see that there's a lot. I mean, it used to be like this all over the place. I have all the ends that I cut off. These are just some of the ends that I cut off from weaving in for the Rink or the Lynx. All that Intarsia stuff, all the different times that you start a bobbin, you end a bobbin. Just as a comparison, for the little boy sweater, I had that. It's not that much. That whole thing was Intarsia, very little Intarsia, just the Scotties, and that gave me that much. So you could see, like, for the Rink or the Lynx, and I'm not done. There's going to be more than this. Anyway, eventually, all of this will be woven in, so it will look more like that. Now, you might be able to see, I did a hybrid of stranded and Intarsia. In order to do Intarsia, you really need to have bobbins. I don't have all of the bobbins on here. Right now, I'm just working with 2 colors. Some of these rows have all 3 colors in them. So then I have a lot of bobbins hanging. These are my 2 sleeves. I had knit them separately, but then I got to a certain point where I decided, let me get the other one caught up to it so I can knit them together. I've just bound off for the underarm, so I'm up to the part where now I'll be constantly decreasing to make the sleeve cap. So I feel like I'm really coming down the home stretch. These sleeves have a very deep ribbing. I think it's 9 inches of ribbing. That's what the pattern called for. Thank goodness, because there's so much of this patterning. I'm at the point now where I can sort of refer back to what I've done before instead of a chart. There was no chart with this pattern. Someone on Ravelry did chart it, but it's not fun to really look at this chart either. There is a very mathematical system to this, where there's individual stitches that fan out, and here there's individual stitches, and then there's this block, like this lozenge of a solid color, and then the brown zigzags. But the brown is not just a straight horizontal angle. This goes in and out to create a really unusual shape. But once you see it, you know, there's sort of like large arrowheads pointing down there. Once you get familiar with that, which at this point I'm very familiar, then you just have to eyeball it. It's always increasing 1 stitch on the left, 1 stitch on the right, and fanning out. Things like this, I started with a piece of yarn in the center with 2 strands, and I don't know if you'll be able to see it on the back, but anyway, I worked up this half and I worked up the other half. With Intarsia, whenever you do a color change, you must cross your yarns over so that you don't get holes. You'll see at all these junctures, there's no holes. There's no light coming through here. And all this entailed is just taking one color and like when these two come together and it's ready to switch from one to the next, you just pass one over the other and then pick up the next one to knit with it. I probably should do a demo, but you know, there's demos out there of how to do Intarsia. So suffice it to say, I am making a lot of progress, and I doubt if I will have this done the next time I see you because there's still the neckline to be done. And like I said, I may have to extend the ribbing on the waist, and I do have to assemble it, and I have all these ends to weave in. But at least you know that this did not go out to pasture to die. I picked it back up to work on again. It's one of the hardest things in knitting. I'd love to hear from you if you've had this experience. When you put something away for a while, it's worse than starting over. It's like now you're partway through, you have to figure out, well, what was I doing when I put it down? With this pattern, because it's written out row by row by row by row, I've put check marks next to each row as I've completed them. So when I do come back to it, I can see where was the last check mark. And then I can pretty easily figure out, you know, there's 6 of this peachy color, which in the pattern is there white. So I look for the 6W, 1 brown, 6W. And then I know that that's this row because this is the only row that has that specific combination. So it would be tedious if I hadn't checked it off to search through to find that specific row. But because I've been checking off, I developed a little system for myself. Yeah, it does mean that I'm pretty much at my computer when I'm knitting this. It's not really subway knitting, but now that I'm nearing the end, I really could just refer back to what I've knit before. Adding the bobbins in the right places. Again, it's not stipulated in the pattern. I had to figure out for myself what's the optimal place to put the bobbin. Of course, when you come to this, you know you have to add in this peach bobbin. Do you want to have a separate bobbin for this section and this section, or do you want to strand it across the back? Because eventually you're going to be doing all of this red too. So there's a lot of decisions that you can make. It's really up to the knitter. It's not specified. And I think at some point I just got better at making that decision. Now, just in case you thought I'd forgotten about this sweater, the Tyrolean, no, I've come back to this one as well. And as luck would have it, I'm out of the black yarn that I need. So again, I had to make a tough decision. I don't want to just use any black yarn, but I only need a few yards. And the company I bought it from, I reached out to them a couple different ways through Ravelry and through their website, and I never heard back from them. They usually are at Vogue Knitting Live. They weren't there this year. Anyway, I didn't want to buy like a whole skein just to get the little bit of black that I need. So initially what I did was I ripped out part of the sweater to make it a little smaller. Now I think it might be a tad too small, but my original plan was to put a colorful motif that I designed on the back of this cardigan. And when I started knitting it in, I wasn't at all happy with how it looked. So I ripped that out. But I had purchased less of the black in anticipation of this being filled up with red, hot pink, and green, and maybe yellow. Anyway, both of the fronts are done. And I have this basted together too. So that's one front. There's the other front. And this sleeve is sewn in, actually. One sleeve completely finished and stitched in. It has a little gathered shoulder. It's black. It's maybe hard for you to see. This is the arm side. So the sleeve protrudes. This whole section from the tip of my finger to my fist, that's all sleeve cap protruding. And then the sleeve comes down from there. The other sleeve is also knit. Oh, maybe this is a better way for me to show you this. That's how the top of the sleeve is knit. And then you attach, so hard to demonstrate. You attach this edge to this edge and that edge to that edge. So you're kind of making like a little box at the top. See that? Normally, this would be just flat, but here it has a third dimension in here. I guess you'll see it better when it's assembled and when it's on. Anyway, that is the second sleeve, and I was doodling around. I think I'm just going to leave this as sort of like a little signature thing. I don't know. I was doing duplicate stitch because I thought I would want to do duplicate stitch on the back. I will most likely have to duplicate stitch some of the other little pieces that go up in here. There's smaller flowers. And then I didn't put in all of the lines as I was knitting. I don't think it was meant to. Now I forget. But I just decided like I'm going to duplicate stitch that in rather than dealing with having to count out all those little individual stitches. So in some places I did. I wasn't consistent about it. But at the end, they will all have everything that they're supposed to have. So where did I run out of yarn? Well, I'm just at the neckline. I'm just at the very, very top edge. I mean, I do have some black, but I definitely don't have enough to do 12 rows of ribbing around the neckline. So I think what I'm going to do is use these other colors, and I'm going to do some little stripe thing. I'll weave in as much black as I can. I have green buttons for this. And then it calls for like a braided cord around the neck with pom-poms hanging. And those are going to be multicolored too. So I guess it'll be okay that there's this little multicolored striping around there. Maybe I'll duplicate stitch some colors down here to reflect back to the neckline. I don't know. I'm a little sick of this. It shouldn't have been as complicated a project as it is because I think the pattern's really well written. I just didn't use the weight yarn that was called for. And, that always presents a problem. But as you can see, this is also almost done. So pretty soon I'm going to have two more very major finished objects. And I'm pretty proud of this, that I've been able to go back to these things that have been dormant for a while and pick them back up and get back in the groove. And, what happens is I bump into some obstacle and I try again, and then I get fed up, put it away, time out. It's really hard to get back into it. I'd love to hear your experience. If you have some kind of tip for how you do that, or whether you just completely stay the course and don't let those obstacles stop you. You work on resolving them in the moment. I mean, I'm sure different people have different strategies for how they handle that situation, because it must happen to everyone that you run out of yarn, or the sleeve doesn't fit right, or whatever. What do you do? Comment below, please. Oh, I forgot. I did already knit the button bands. So fortunately, I had enough yarn to do that. I suppose I could have made the button bands in a different color, but I really want those green buttons to stand out against the black. So I'm sticking with this. Um, these are the buttons that I got from my friend. Aren't they gorgeous? It's carved in here. And it's sort of like a little frosted coating. And then inside the carving, it's a little shinier. There's only 3 of them. Can any of you think of some vintage pattern that you've seen that calls for 3 really special buttons? Because I don't want to put these in the back of something. I want them to be like, here, front and center. Oh, they're so gorgeous. Thanks in advance for commenting a lot. I'd like to help my friend out by selling a couple of things that I thought might be of interest to you. These are things that are small enough to ship. There are some other objects that vintage lovers would, I'm sure, be thrilled to get their hands on, but they're too big to ship. I'll put a picture here. There's a big sewing kit with drawers of thread. If you're local and you're interested in it, we can arrange for you to swing by Gramercy Park neighborhood and pick it up. She will accept any reasonable offer. Anyway, there are these 2 little celluloid objects. This one is a ring presentation box that you could keep on your vanity. It's old. I'm not going to tell you that it's in mint condition. It's a little bit like soiled inside from age and use, but it is vintage, and it says on the back, I don't know if you can see that, made in the USA. It's a really lovely little object. So in the comments, you can bid on this. I'd like to start the bidding at $25 and just put an amount, and the highest bidder over 25, I'll be in touch with you about it. Same thing for this lovely little celluloid box, hinged, also vintage, also not in perfect condition. These things are 100 years old. It opens like that. It's lined in velvet. The velvet's a little bit faded with age, but there's a cute little hinge on the side. And here's the bottom. This one's not marked made in the USA that I could see. Doesn't really have any markings on it. This could be for a gentleman's cufflinks or tie tacks or collar stays, or it could be for a woman too, to put a few little precious pieces of jewelry in. And for knitters, it could be a lovely place to keep stitch markers or other little notions. So let's see if you want to bid on these things. In the Culture Corner this week, I have a few things for you. I went to see a Broadway play starring the son of a friend of mine. The guy is not very well known, although if he wins the Tony in early June, maybe he'll become more known. In some circles, he must be very known. He's had some unbelievable roles. He played Han Solo in one of the Star Wars films, not one of the box office successes, and he was in a Woody Allen film, small part. Nevertheless, it's a big deal to be in a Woody Allen film. And the Coen Brothers, a film called Hail Caesar, which you might have seen with George Clooney and Ralph Fiennes. The guy's name is Alden Ehrenreich. He's a young guy in his 30s. And with Becky Shaw, he's made his Broadway debut. So keep your fingers crossed for him. He's gotten some rave reviews. I'll put a link to the New York Times article that appeared today. You can read a little bit more about him and see some pictures of him. Anyway, we were at the show this week.
doesn't know is trying to claw her way back to a version of the life that she envisioned for herself. And so I think we meet her at a very vulnerable moment in her life, with an opportunity for change that I think.
In the big park near where I live, where there's often a green market several days a week, there was a day recently where they had garbage trucks on display in the park. Not just any garbage truck, but special garbage trucks that had been painted by young artists. And each truck had a little story to go with it about the artist and what their theme was. So I took some snapshots to share with you. You'll see those.
So it's 2 cups.
How adorable is that? So cute. How do you get those objects on there?
So these are glued. So this one's glued outside, and then these ones are glued inside. And then you can draw on the top with marker to add more detail. So yeah, we do like education programs too. So when people donate things, we teach classes with how to use them.
I belong to the Knitting Guild in New York, the Big Apple Knitters Guild. We have a very active membership, and occasionally we do meetups in between the monthly meetings. So I hosted one of those at, guess where, HM Nabavian. And I have some pictures of the group inside the shop, so I'll put them here. Also, for the Guild, in May every year, they do a session for members sharing their talents. And they asked me if I would be willing to participate this year by doing some kind of a class on vintage knitting. So I had carte blanche to build a course that I thought would be appealing to people. And for a couple of hours, about 2.5 hours, I explained to people how you decode a vintage pattern and how you resize it. And then we cut out templates. So there's some pictures taken by the most amazing member of the guild. She's not only the designated photographer at most events, but she also writes the various newsletters, and she's an excellent writer. So we're really lucky to have her. Plus, she's just all-round convivial, lovely woman. So I think that's about it. If I find anything else, I'll throw it in. This is the inside of a theater on 2nd Avenue and 12th Street in New York. Used to be a Yiddish theater 100 years ago, but now it's a movie theater. Incredible space. That's it for this episode. I hope you've enjoyed our time together. Don't forget to comment. Don't forget to hit the like button. If you're not subscribed, do that. Then you'll get notified. Hit the bell, and you'll never miss another Show and Tell episode. All right, take care, everybody. last episode, I promised to do a random drawing if we got over 25 comments, which we did. We didn't reach 50, so I can't do 2 drawings. We could try again this week, but we did reach 25. So here's how this is going to work. I put the URL in. So here's the URL. And I have to do this math and then get the comments and solve this math problem. Stop. Jenny Lou Fair. Okay. Jenny Lou, I don't know if that's your name, but I will reach out to you and we'll figure out a way for me to get your US address. And this box will be on its way to you with some beautiful merino wool and instructions for crocheting this cowl will be inside. So if you too want to win a free prize, make sure you comment on this week's video and I can do it again.